Hi, and thanks for watching another instructional video for CSCI 1300. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to actually access your class now that we have a H file and a CPP file related to the class that we have just built called the bank account class. So just to recap, we have an H file that has all of the functions and private variables that will be associated with this class in order to represent a bank account. We have a bunch of function declarations here, and in our CPP file we have gone through and we have given those commands. So we have put in information into our functions. We're also linking bank.cpp to our bank.h through an include statement to bank.h. So we're referencing the blueprint file, which is our H file, at the top of our includes for CPP, and we will also do the same thing here in our driver. And our driver is a third CPP that will basically have a main, and that's really the difference here. Notice the bank.cpp is just a bunch of functions, right? We've got a bunch of functions but no driver. But here in our driver main, we have our int main, we have an include bank H. So we have linked the driver and the CPP file to the H file, and that means that we have access to all of the bank information associated with the bank objects. So if we wanted to use say we wanted to check the balance, well, let's create an account. So let's call this bank, which is the name of our class. And then let's create a bank object called account1, and we're going to set it equal to the default constructor here. So this is calling the default constructor, right? And if we remember, the default constructor should initialize the balance to 0. Okay, so what we can do is we can see out the call to the bank account. So how do we do that? Well, we have this account_1, and in order to access it, we have to use functions associated with the class. So we're going to use these functions on balance, or on the object to go to balance. So what we really want to do is we really just want to print what's there. So we need to call getBalance. So let's call getBalance here, and you can even see that the compiler knew that getBalance was there the moment I started writing it. So because this is going to return something, I'm going to try and print it. I can also, instead of printing it, I could say double current balance for the first account is equal to account1.getBalance. So we can set it equal to something like that, and then we could see out the account1 balance is, and then we'll just print the information in current balance, which is where that information is coming from for account 1. So now let's think about, say we want to do the same thing, but with a parameterized constructor call. So what we could do is we could create a second bank object called bank account2. We'll set it equal to another call to the bank constructor, except now we're going to actually pass in some amount. So let's create a double initial amount, set it equal to 1000, and now we're going to pass in the initial amount here. So instead of leaving this blank in the parentheses, we're going to actually pass in some information. And if I actually wanted to do this with just a direct print statement, I could do something like this, where I say account2 balance, and now I'm just going to actually use account2 dot get balance, and I'm just going to print this out directly here. So we can do it two ways. We can either set a variable to catch the amount coming back, because this is a get balance is a double, right? It's going to return some double data type, or we can just directly print it from the function call. We can do both of those. So let's try that. So in order to compile this, let's talk about compiling. So now we're dealing with multiple file compilation. So in order to compile what you have so far with the H, the CPP, and the driver, what we'll need to do is specify only the CPP files that we want to compile together. We're linking to H through the include statements in bank.cpp and in the driver. So these reference that moment that we load those files. So all we have to really do is just load the files that reference the H file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type in G++, the name of the first account, comma, the name of the first CPP file, comma, the name of the second CPP file. And you would do this for as many number of CPP files as you had that you wanted to link together with that are associated with the class. So here we have the class.cpp, and we have the driver for that class as well. So if I run the code now, we're compiling successfully, which means that that's great. That means that we don't have any errors. So let's go ahead and run the code here. And we can see here that we're getting an account 1 balance of 0 and an account 2 balance of 1,000. The reason why is because if we go here and look at this call to the default constructor, balance is just set to 0 here inside of the balance variable. So when we created account 1, we just set it to 0 inside of the balance variable. But when we created account 2, we passed in the initial amount here, which was 1,000, and now that amount is actually residing within account 2, this bank account variable. So now we've talked about how to use constructor calls, whether they are the default or a parameterized constructor call, and how we can actually print and store information as a result of that. So we could do the same thing here with any function that we wanted to call. We could call withdraw, deposit in the same way. But the way that we do that is in order to use a function on an object, it's a lot like using anything from the library. So we have to use a dot operator and then link that function call to that object. So account 1 will call getBalance on itself using the dot operator, and it will then produce or give you back, return, whatever the balance is within account 1, whatever that variable contains. And the same thing here with if we pass an initial amount, we can basically call the parameterized constructor and give it some variable, as long as the parameterized constructor is set up to take in that variable or variables, and we can print that information. And just to note, because this is a function with a return type, because it's just giving us what is currently stored, we can either store that with a catch variable, so we can catch whatever comes back from the function call, and then print that here in our main, in our driver, or we can just directly call and print out whatever gets returned back from the function call. So here we've got a value stored in account underscore 2.getBalance, and when we see out it, we actually get that amount. And just real quickly to go over compilation again, when you're compiling your code to test it on values, you have to say compile the following, which is your G++ command, followed by all of the CPP files related to your H file. So if you have a class.cpp and a driver.cpp, you will need to list both of those here in order. They don't have to be exactly in order, but they do have to all be ordered. So you have to specify every single one that is possibly related to this particular code. So thanks for watching, everybody. That's all I've got right now, and happy coding.